How does Warwick Business School approach the whole area of social media?
Historically, the school has approached it on a very ad hoc basis. It's grown really because obviously social networking is very much a user-driven tool.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it is therefore naturally grown through that. So we have a whole variety of different student groups, alumni groups who have just started using these tools really without the driving force being behind from the school.
Right.
This is changing slowly because obviously we're recognising that as things are growing, these tools are only going to become much more usable, much more enhancing of the school, and therefore the school is developing a strategy. We're using 3 predominantly, which is LinkedIn, Facebook and Twitter.
Okay.
We have a loose strategy behind the use of those 3. We use Facebook as the informal, interactive way of connecting with our alumni in the group, posting events, posting things like old photographs from year groups, from the 80s, scanning them in, getting people to tag themselves and trying to draw people in through that way.
Okay.
Twitter we're using as the informal, more personal side of the team. So not so much of what the activity that we're doing, but what we as a team are was the initial scope for Twitter.
Okay.
We also use it for short bursts about events that are coming up particularly. We had to use it to let alumni know at one point that an event was cancelled at the last minute due to the snows and things that happened at the beginning of this year. So there's kind of like those immediate last little pushes that we want for advertising. And then LinkedIn we're using largely for our professional interest groups.
Nice.
We're using that as a much more professional business and allowing alumni to use the space to message one another, to discuss topics, to post jobs, that kind of much more sort of formal side of the network. We're reaching 3,000 members on LinkedIn, on the LinkedIn group. We have a series of subgroups within that one group now that LinkedIn have brought out subgroups, and they're starting to grow, so that's great, and we hope we're starting to see some kind of discussions going on. Facebook, we have over 2,000 members. Again, there is some discussions going on, but I guess with all of them, a lot of people have joined, but there's not always a lot of action happening within it. We're starting to see that, and that's where our strategy is going now, is more looking at how we can really generate some activity, encourage alumni to start generating the activity themselves, and then it becomes a peer-to-peer rather than us talking to them. The tools have started out as a user-driven tool, but as they're developing, businesses are becoming much more savvy about them, and we need to, as higher education institutions, we need to become much more savvy and use them across the board with our marketing, our external relations, our recruitment, our development, our fundraising, our alumni, across the board with all the different areas of the school, and therefore we're needing a strategy that is from the top. That is looking over the whole school perspective, looking at a way of coherently sending out the right messages to the right audiences that are using these different media tools. I think it's important for any business or any institution that the communication that is going from in the inside out is coherent. It's it's branded. It's obvious that it's coming from the particular place. You think of the biggest brands, even just the colour of a text, you know immediately that it is that company's brand, even if it hasn't got anything within it. I think we have to be careful with social networking tools because they are in essence a user-driven tool, and I think that you can overstep the mark and become far too rigid and too controlling, and that takes away the very power of what the tool is. The greatest power of the networking tools is when you have peer-to-peer. I think too often we can want to take too much control or something. So I think it's a fine balance to have, but certainly I think it needs to be looked at with the strategy. I do think it needs to come as an overarching strategy across the school or across a department. But it has to be handled very carefully. It's only going to grow, certainly, until as the culture grows with it, I think we're going to have to use it increasingly. I think the future will be far more online events, so webinars, far more use of encouraging dialogue within these. So as I was saying before, you know, we've got the users sitting there on these social network tools that we particularly focus on, and our focus now is in getting more of the activity going on those. I think that will be the future of the school, and then also maybe with this strategy that we're developing, getting a much more unified use of it across the school and having different departments really inputting in it, and also the academics.